How are you doing, wonderful beings? Today, at the moment of recording this video, it is Sunday. So, first of all, I hope you are experiencing the result of having taken the necessary actions before, in order to be enjoying a Sunday in which you feel a deep gratitude for what is happening to you in your universe. And if it is not so, if you are not having a good time or not feeling that there are many things to thank, may this Sunday be a time to realize that maybe you have to try a new plan. The great sages are those who know how to change in life, and those who accept an area of uncertainty, of risk, of fear of releasing some paradigms. That is why today I wanted to talk to you about symptoms and consciousness. Symptoms and consciousness. It is such a huge topic. It is so deep that, as I say sometimes in the gatherings, as a communicator I also go through that impotence, through that deep desire that everything heals quickly and that my universe heals. And to achieve that, I have to make everyone in my universe heal, and that everything that hurts in my universe heals, healing me and finding the key to what is before me in each of the manifestations of the fractals. When I started together with Lucrecia, we both started and continued on the path of creating a monopointe. We did not come from long trajectories of spiritual paths, of consciousness, of biology, or anything like that. But we felt this in a very strong way when we found ourselves with the possibility and with the certainty too, because it was a certainty when we saw that a symptom was related to an emotion and that emotions impact biology. That first chapter, that huge door that was opening, sounded so logical to an inner part, to a deep part of one, that I remember, and the consultants who know me, who have gone through the monopointe path know that I tell them this story, is that watching a video I told Lucrecia, we are going to leave everything, and we are going to dedicate ourselves to that, because that is true. What we did not know at that time, I am talking about the first Hammerian currents, without naming anyone in particular, but first came Hammer and then came Spanish, French, Belgian currents. I am talking about that stage, that first stage that gave rise to what here was known as biocurrents. It had a deep, huge message. I always say it in the gatherings. I think that not even Hammer realized when he proposed what he proposed that he would leave us such a huge door after those biocurrents. Because there is something that Hammer did not see, and it was the depth, for example, of the transgenerational. And there is something that the biocurrents did not know how to perceive, they did not know how to realize. And it is not wrong. I always clarify this. It is not a criticism to those wonderful biocurrents. But what they have not had is the possibility, or the intuition, or that deep view that leads them to see further back and further back and further back. In our case, what happened to us with Lucrecia was that when we started and we had not presented Reoric sins, I had not presented Reoric sins yet, which means return to the origin by interpretation of symptom. That is what Reoric sins means. And we address things only from the transgenerational, from the method of genasociogram and those things. We realized that people were going through very deep things. And then we presented Reoric sins. That is why I say that the monopointe is a dynamic path of consciousness, because every path of consciousness must be so. They must be dynamic by nature as nature is, because one finds it as one dives deeper and deeper. When we presented Reoric sins, and we began to take people to literally live the life of those ancestors, to travel to the past, to what is known as past lives, but also what is known as constellations, and also what is known as a lot of things, but it is something much stronger and deeper than the union of all those things. It is direct, led by something that is wonderful, and there, what we discovered is that if we travel to the life of the ancestors, but not to look for what happened, but to look for exactly what the symptom says that I have to go looking for. That is why it is called by interpretation of symptom. The first thing that happened to us is that we found that evidently that ancestor from 50, 100, 200 years ago, it does not matter if the person had data, if he did not have data. If he did not have data, it may be even better. If no one had told him anything in his life, it may be even better. I say it because of the questions that I normally receive. When we went to the life of that person, and we found that he had lived that history, we were already 1,000 steps beyond the transgenerational in terms of the genosociogram and all that kind of thing, because the person lived it in first person, in his own flesh. And we did not take him or her to just any history, but to the one that caused the symptom. We dived in more depth. First they relived the history, and so we performed many consultations. Then they repaired the history, and then we began to realize that we could not stay with that feeling like by seeing a 4-year-old boy abandoned in an orphanage or abused 100 years ago and go see that history. It was not enough for us. The soul tells you that it is not enough. So we said, we have to go and we have to rescue that boy. And when we began to rescue those children and to change the history, the people returned to the present. The consultation was over. They left, and automatically the emails began to arrive in which they said, my life is different. The situation was fixed with my son. This other situation was fixed. I went because of a symptom X. But today my problem is not the symptom. The symptom is gone. Why was the symptom gone? Because the purpose of the humano puente path as a path of consciousness is not the symptom, but to listen to the symptom. A path of consciousness like the one of humano puente flips your reality around so much that you realize through personal experience, and not because someone tells you. That what humanity believes is a punishment is perhaps the greatest treasure in humanity, because what happened to us when we performed reoric sins, and we began to say, this has to be healed, it does not matter if it is hard. We have to go and rescue that 4-year-old boy, we have to give him a hug, we have to allow him to kill that abuser from 100 years ago. We have to allow him to kick out that abuser from 100 years ago, to call his mother and father so that they come and hug him and support him. Let's change that. Let's get that out. And at an even deeper level later, because years passed while we were realizing the treasure we had in our hands. Years passed until we realized that later there was still a bad guy left in that scene, who was the abuser. So what we proposed from there was to go and talk to the bad guy and take him to his childhood and discover why that boy who had been born so good, so innocent, and so pure, like all the children in the world, why at one point in his life he had reached adulthood being a violent person or an abuser or an alcoholic or a bad guy or an abandoner. And what happened to us? What was obviously going to happen? That in all the histories we find that actually that boy was a treasure, and that he had been damaged, and that we also had to go and rescue him. It was when we began to understand the complete logic of the abused and the abuser, the conquered and the conqueror, of the violent and the abused, of the abandoner and the abandoned, when all the truths that seemed the opposite met, and their reality burst in happiness and abundance. That's why in Humano Puente, when people ask me, Pablo, how do I become a biodecoder? I answer, this is not biodecoding. When they ask me, Pablo, how do I practice biological decoding? I say, this is not biological decoding. This is not an alternative or complementary medicine path. This is a path of consciousness along which one learns to thank the symptom because it saved one's life, because it solved one's life. And people always ask me the same, and what about symptoms in children? You have to work with the parents, it is from the parents. And how do I do this other thing? humanopuente.com, the consultants, the online encounter, the books, everything. But beyond that, what I want is to leave you this message that says, a symptom is a treasure that comes to change your life. And therefore, in Humano Puente, we do not consider everything prior as healing. Because there should actually exist in the Western language a term for true healing, and it does not exist, which is to have understood and healed the histories prior to this human experience, histories which gave as a result that I come to this human experience to heal the previous. When I healed the previous and my life was completely healed, that is what in Humano Puente we call healing. but it is a homonym with what here is called healing. Here, no longer having a word is called healing. That is not healing from humano puente. That is to get rid of what bothers you in the body. However, it is very big and very powerful, and it is very good, but the reason why you embody, the reason why your life is distorted, the reason why you suffer, the reason why you get along badly with someone, the reason why you have a bad economy, the reason why you can't find a partner, it remains the same when that word is gone. That is why the humano puente path is a path of consciousness. The last thing, there are so many messages, so many questions that I thank, that I love, that I honor, that I will continue doing my best to answer all of you. But I had an idea that I think is going to be the best. I take some messages. I say this is a good topic for a video. This person asks me is a good topic for a video. I am going to answer all the other topics in an area that is much longer, more extensive, and relaxed, and it is in the Humano Puente podcasts. You can Google and see all the platforms in which the Humano Puente podcasts are available. If you have a Spotify account, for example, you can search up Humano Puente and all the programs that we already recorded and uploaded will appear. They are programs of an hour, of 20 minutes where we talk about all the topics. Well, in those podcasts, I am going to answer all the questions that you leave. Cesar, who accompanies me in all this part of the podcast, and that in fact it was his idea to create the podcast of Humano Puente. He is going to compile the questions that you asked me here in the videos, and I am going to answer them all there with the time they deserve, and with the possibilities that I also have in terms of space and time. I want to thank everyone I meet on the street who thanks me, and I say, thank you, thank you, thank you. Everyone who sends me an email, every gift, I love you, I love you. What is happening to me is nothing more than an act of generous selfishness, as I always say, I love you, thank you, let's continue. See you at humanapuente.com. A big hug.